Hi everyone, it's Athena here. The video I've decided to do today is about the differences between somebody who has borderline personality disorder and someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. Now, before I go into these differences, I would just like to say that there are people out there who have both of these disorders. So these disorders are comorbid. And when that is the case, then obviously these differences don't apply because the person will have traits from both disorders. There is a website called bpdcentral.com, and according to them, a third of people with borderline personality also have narcissistic personality. Now, before I go into the differences, I would like to just state that not all people with borderline or narcissistic traits are abusive. It all depends on where they fall on the spectrum of their respective disorders and also how responsive they are to treatment. If, of course, they have full-blown narcissistic personality or borderline personality, then there will be more resistance to treatment and they will most likely be more abusive. I would like to sort of go through all the criteria according to the DSM-5 of somebody with borderline personality disorder and somebody with narcissistic personality. It is important to just kind of go through these, and then I will talk about the differences. Now, I'm going to start with borderline personality. Borderline personality is part of a cluster B personality disorder and it is characterized by dramatic, overly emotional, or unpredictable thinking or behavior. And in the cluster B personality disorder, we have antisocial personality, we have narcissistic personality, histrionic personality disorder, and borderline personality. Now, people with borderline personality experience wide mood swings and can display a great sense of instability and insecurity. They have some key signs and symptoms, which I am going to talk about right now. First thing that somebody with borderline personality does is that they will do everything in their power to avoid being abandoned by friends and family. And sometimes this also includes manipulation. Now, something that people with borderline personality do is known as splitting, which means that they alternate between idolization and devaluation of somebody, or they think in very black and white terms. So one minute they might be absolutely head over heels in love with somebody, and then the next minute that person might do something small that they don't like and they will suddenly hate that person. So it goes from one extreme to the next. They have distorted and very unstable self-image. The way that they feel about themselves is very unstable. So they have a big problem with their moods, their opinions. They fluctuate between this up and down all the time. Another important thing worth mentioning is that people with borderline personality have very impulsive behaviors that can sometimes have dangerous outcomes. So they might, for instance, go out and excessively spend. They might have unsafe sex. They may use substances in an extreme way, so they are prone to substance abuse or even reckless driving. Another thing that people with borderline personality is that they self-harm quite often, and they are also very suicidal at times. So they will threaten suicide or they will even make suicide attempts. They have huge periods of intense depressed mood and they can be very irritable or anxious. And this can last for hours or even days. They have chronic feelings of emptiness. They have periods of inappropriate, intense or uncontrollable anger, which is usually followed by shame or guilt. And lastly, they have dissociative feelings. So they are very prone to disconnecting from their thoughts or their sense of identity. They can also experience complete out-of-body type feelings, and they can even have stress-related paranoid thoughts. And unfortunately, severe cases of stress can also lead to psychotic episodes. Now, on to narcissistic personality. People with narcissistic personality believe that they are special and more important than others. They have constant fantasies about power, success, attractiveness, etc. They fail to recognize other people's needs and feelings, so they lack empathy. They usually exaggerate their achievements and talents. They have a constant expectation of others praising and admiring them, so they have this need to constantly be admired. They can be very arrogant. They have unreasonable expectations of favors and advantages, and sometimes they will take advantage of other people in order to achieve these unreasonable expectations that they have. And they also have a huge amount of envy towards others that are better than them, or they will believe that other people are envious of them. Now, I'm going to go into the differences of these two disorders, but as I mentioned before, if somebody has both of these disorders, so they have a comorbid borderline personality disorder with narcissistic personality, then these differences will not apply because that person will have traits of both disorders. Now, the first difference is that people with borderline personality are more likely to self-harm as a cry for help, whereas people with narcissistic personality will harm others to get what they need. So they will either gaslight, they will use triangulation, they will sabotage, and all these things that they do because they don't want to lose this superior self-image that they have and this grandiosity that they feel. Now, while borderlines have an intense fear of abandonment, narcissists are often the ones doing the abandoning, although I have seen narcissists who are also afraid of abandonment. Borderlines will manipulate their loved ones using maybe control or jealousy because they are so scared of being abandoned, whereas narcissists will manipulate their loved ones by devaluing and discarding their victims to humiliate and control them. So they will either covertly or overtly put their victims down. They will emotionally withdraw from them. So they will use a silent treatment. They will constantly invalidate them. They will abandon them without giving them any explanation. And that isn't something that you will see a borderline do. A borderline is mostly clingy and needy, and that is why they control their partner. That is why they will maybe manipulate their partner. Now, both borderline and narcissists share the intense experience of having a huge amount of rage. However, a borderline's rage usually seems to be more dissociative, whereas a narcissist's rage, on the other hand, usually stems from his need to be grandiose. If somebody challenges a narcissist's grandiosity or an entitlement, then they will get very, very angry and they will explode in what is known as narcissistic rage. Lastly, borderlines have a wider emotional range than narcissists do. They will experience a similar sense of chronic emptiness as narcissists do, but borderlines can actually feel quite intense love for their friends or family or for their partners. Narcissists, on the other hand, display a very shallow version of emotions. They experience constant boredom and emotional numbness, which basically is what causes them to always be on the lookout for a new source of narcissistic supply. And narcissistic supply is basically people out there which will provide them with the validation and the admiration that they need. I think one of the things that is very important to mention about narcissists is that they are very good at mimicking other people's behaviors and emotions. So they will come across as a normal person. However, everything that they will show emotionally is just an act. They will mimic what it's like to be sad or devastated. So they're very good at imitating. The most intense emotions that I think narcissists are capable of are envy and rage. They're very envious and they get very angry if they are challenged. I think that's it. So those are the differences of somebody with borderline personality and narcissistic personality. Like I said before, it always depends on how high up on the spectrum somebody is. With these disorders, if they only have one or two traits, then it means that they have a higher chance of getting better by seeking out therapy. They have a higher chance of improvement. If they are on the higher end of the spectrum, if they have full-blown narcissistic personality or borderline personality, or if they have both of these disorders together, then that changes things quite a bit. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. I have had questions from you asking me about borderline personality and narcissism, and I wanted to address this. So I hope this video answered some of your questions. The people that I know who have borderline personality have a huge capacity for empathy. They understand very complex emotions a lot more than narcissists do. So people with borderline personality have a lot more positive traits. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a comment and check out my other videos. Thanks so much. Have a good week and see you very soon. Take care. Bye.